What's up, everybody? It's Thursday, September 21st. Another down day in the market. Like I said, folks, I've been telling you this stuff like months in advance, and this is not like a one-time thing. Oh man, these dogs. I move away from New York, get away from the sirens, and now I have these yapping dogs outside. And I like dogs. It's just they should freaking shut up. The owner should keep them quiet. So, and it's usually these little dogs, man, which I can't stand. Anyway, folks, I've been telling you this stuff in advance, and it's not just like a one-time thing. You can go back and take a look at my track record, basically, of these calls. This is all based on the fiscal flows. I told you September, October was going to be problematic. I told you this months ago, and I'm telling you now that, this whole thing will stabilize again in mid-November. We'll have another dip in mid-December, and then we go positive from the end of December all the way into mid-February. And I've been telling you also that the overarching picture is bullish. You shouldn't be thinking about any, major top. All these things are just corrections based on flows, basically based on tax drains. And they're all very predictable. They're all on the calendar. They're all scheduled. We know when they're going to happen. We know when the drains are going to happen. We know when the big transfers are going to happen based on quarterly interest payments or 4 or 5 times a month Social Security payments, etc. So if you've been a skeptic up until now, I don't know how else I can prove it to you, because everything I've been saying has been happening. And you're not going to see this in the media. That should be obvious by now. The narrative today or any day that the market goes down, it's either something having to do with the Fed and interest rates, a monetarist perspective, because that's like a freaking mental illness, and I'm going to talk about that just as an anecdotal example in a second, or something geopolitical that pops up, and nine times out of 10, those things have no effect on the United States economy. And if they do, it is a consequence of policy actions that are taken in response to any geopolitical event. And an example of that would be the sanctions that the Biden administration put on not just Russia, but so many other countries since the beginning of the Ukraine war. So that has been a factor in the high inflation level, but so has the Fed's rate hikes. That has been a factor. That has been a primary factor in the stubbornly high level of inflation. We saw again today that Turkey raised its rate again. And every time they do this, the inflation rate goes up, the Turkish lira goes down. This is the classic Einstein's definition of insanity. You do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result every time. This alone ought to be an exercise in learning for the monetarists out there, especially those in central banks, the Fed, and elsewhere, that continue to adhere to this flawed orthodoxy, believing that rate hikes are going to squash inflation, when you have these examples like Turkey, you have these examples like Argentina, you have these examples like Japan, which is the opposite. They're not raising rates, and like I've been saying in these videos, Japan's inflation is very low despite the fact that they are a net importer of energy. So the examples are out there for these people to see, but again, they're not going to look at them. They're not going to acknowledge them because they adhere to this orthodoxy. It's like a very elite club, and the members of the club, if you're not thinking along the same lines as the members of this club, you will be excommunicated. You'll be kicked out. You will no longer be in a position to be a member of the elite club like central bankers. You're just not, because their belief system is based on monetarism, which they really don't understand. It's a flawed understanding of monetarism. And unfortunately, it's been gripping economics and economic policy for like 50 years now. You can go back and blame Milton Friedman. One of the anecdotes I was gonna, talk to you about was today. Zelensky went to the Capitol Hill. He's at the White House and he's trying to get another, 20, 25 billion from the U.S. And the GOP hardliners in Congress, they don't want to give him any more money. And I could totally understand that. But Rand Paul said something completely idiotic. He said, we can't be borrowing money from China and then giving it to Ukraine. And there we go again with this idiotic belief that we're borrowing dollars from China. Now, folks, this is not a hard thing to understand. The only way China can get dollars is they sell us stuff, whatever, electronics, textiles, toys, whatever it is they sell us, steel, and they get dollars in exchange. We pay for those goods in dollars. They earn the dollars. So they're not lending us dollars. They only have dollars as a consequence of the sovereign, which is the United States government, supplying those dollars, paying those dollars either directly or through private vendors here in the United States. You cannot borrow something that you can create without limit. We are the monopoly issuer of the U.S. dollar. So this whole premise of we're borrowing dollars from China. Where did China get the dollars from? This would be a question I would ask Rand Paul. Very simple question, not threatening or anything. Where did China get the dollars from that we ostensibly borrow from them? Where did those dollars come from? They could only come from one place. They could only come from the monopoly issuer of the U.S. dollar, and that is the U.S. government. Nobody else. China doesn't print dollars up in some factory somewhere. It doesn't come from any other place other than the issuer, which is the United States government. It's incredible to me that this belief is still out there, because anyone with even a very low level of education should understand that you cannot borrow something until it exists first. And it cannot exist in the first instance in China. It has to exist first here in the United States and be transferred to China. So we have the capacity to issue as many dollars as we want. It's just like going back to that famous exchange between Alan Greenspan, who was the former head of the Fed, and Paul Ryan, when he was a congressman. I think it was back in 2006, when Paul Ryan, and this is on YouTube, you can Google this. Paul Ryan asked Alan Greenspan, if we privatize Social Security, will it be more secure? And Alan Greenspan explained to Paul Ryan that the United States, these were like his exact words, the United States can create as many dollars as it wants and pay it to whomever it wants. But the question is, do we have a system in place that would ensure the availability of the real assets that those dollars are meant to consume? Like when he's talking about Social Security, he was talking about what are the real assets? Food, clothing, shelter, maybe leisure activities, medical care, this kind of stuff. Those are the real assets. If you don't have those things, it doesn't matter how many dollars you have. Those are finite things, okay? The dollars are just electronic digits. electrons, basically. So Rand Paul, but look, I could understand not wanting to give money to Ukraine. That I could totally understand. But to create an argument, again, which reinforces this false idea that we're borrowing dollars from China and then giving it to Ukraine. Look, I'm against giving more money to Ukraine, all right? But you don't have to make up some cockamamie, and I don't think he's making it up. I think that's his true belief. You know, people have asked me in the past, well, Mike, don't you think they really understand, but they're playing it a certain way, or they're communicating it a certain way in order to back up some kind of ulterior motive or agenda that they have? And I say no. And I've given examples of why, or the reason why I believe the answer is no. Like, I met a lot of these people when I used to work at Fox News, and I've had conversations with them. And the easiest way to know that they really don't understand is that in their conversations that I've had with them, they routinely contradict themselves. So if you're slick and you have some, ulterior motive and you're trying to be subversive, you got your story down, okay? Because that's the only way it's going to fly, and that's the only way you're going to convince people. And if you contradict yourself, I mean, that's like shooting holes in your story. It's just not real. So, but I hate to see this thing because, unfortunately, the vast majority of people think the same thing, that we're borrowing dollars from China. I mean, it's the most ludicrous, idiotic thing I've ever heard, really. And it's perpetuated constantly, this false idea. And it doesn't take a genius to understand that cannot be the case. It just absolutely cannot be the case. The dollars have to exist first before anyone could borrow them. And the only place they could come from is the issuer, which is the U.S. government. That's it. So, yeah, so we had that going on today. So anyway, let me sum this thing up. Because, of course, today's sell-off, what do you think it was, the media, they blamed it on what? What do you think? Of course, they blamed it on interest rates, okay? They had to go deep to find a reason. Now it was like, because the Fed is now saying there might not be a rate cut until all the way until September 2024. Folks, it has nothing to do with interest rates. Zero about interest rates. As a matter of fact, the rates going up has been a major fiscal boost to the economy. You may not want to believe that, but it has. I go over every week in my report the hundreds of billions so far that have been pumped into the economy from the rate hikes. All right? That's real. Just like back in Reagan's first term, when rates were 20%, interest income transfers were the biggest component of GDP. And that was really what was behind the so-called Reagan boom. People don't want to believe that now. But that's what it is. That's what's going on right now. So all of this stuff has nothing to do with rates. It has to do with everything I tell you all the time, which is the fiscal flows. That's the first derivative of everything. And not only did I tell you already months ago that we were going to be in this correction in September. I mean, if you listen to me, you had plenty of time to prepare or even make money on this. But I'm telling you now, by mid-November, everything will stabilize and go back up. And I look at these numbers every single day. We still have to recover about 68 billion of the tax drain. And by the way, somebody told me today, I wasn't even aware of this. I should be, because I live in California now. But California has postponed its tax collections until October 15th because we had those floods here. So that's going to be another hit, because October 15th anyway, notwithstanding California, October 15th is another individual tax payment day for people who filed extensions. You're really supposed to pay when you file the extension, but people pay also October 15th. But now you're going to add on to that the California requirement of payments. And so, yeah, we're going to have another dip then. But again, November, everything stabilizes, and it may happen before then. You know, like I said, I see the numbers every single day. We're 68 billion underwater. We got to recover that just to get back to where we were before September 15th. And then it's got to build up again. But I could see that trend every single day. I mean, this is what puts me and, you know, people who subscribe to my report, like, we are there's nothing even close out there to the type of information that I provide. And that's not, you know, bragging. It's just, this is what it's all about, okay? And the fact that people ignore this, that's really the word. They ignore it. They're ignorant of this. They're not aware. And even if they were, most people would not believe it. I think a lot of you believe it now just because if you've been following me for a while, you see, you know, the track record. You see my calls and how it has played out into reality. And again, it's not me trying to give a pat on my back. It's what I do. It's education. It's information. It's providing information. It's educating. Why do I do it? I said because it's gratifying to me, and it helps me too to really delve deeply into my process. It makes me a better investor. Very simple. Very simple. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. Don't forget, go to my website, pitbulleconomics.com. Sign up for a 30-day free trial of MMT Trader. See you tomorrow. Bye.